After a lackluster start to his LIV Golf career, Dustin Johnson finally hit the ground running with a win in Boston last weekend. That said, despite not being at his best, the 38-year-old still managed to rack up some serious cash after the first 4 events. Just how much of that is actual golf winnings though, and is anyone else earning as much as him? Well, keep watching to find out. First up, Johnson breaks the $10 million barrier after playoff drama. It's been a strange couple of years for the Saudi League's OG marquee signing with little to no success on the course. Like being one of the highest paid golfers, Dustin Johnson had the weight of the world on his shoulders. Plus, you've got to maintain your reputation after leaving the PGA Tour like that anyway. Unfortunately though, the 38-year-old's been ripped to shreds in the press after his winless start. Sure, Johnson's been on the winning side more often than not, but if you take his performances individually, well, let's just say he would have missed the cut had he taken part in the Tour's playoffs. Having said that, if there was someone who was due a spicy redemption arc, it was Dustin Johnson. After all, he's still young enough to perform at the highest level and prove his worth. Oh, and guess what? That's exactly what he did, as he made a miraculous 35-foot eagle putt in a sudden death playoff win in Boston. Interestingly, while this was his first win in almost 19 months, it was arguably one of the biggest he could have gotten. In fact, his solo earnings from his Invitational alone were well above the $4 million mark, and when you add all the prize money that he's made through his team over these past 4 events, well, then it turns into an even more impressive figure of almost $10 million. Up next, how much of that $10 million is actually won on the course? Dustin Johnson's massive winnings just halfway through the LIV Golf season would suggest he's been performing super well on the course, but we all know that's not true. In fact, despite knowing he is still breaking the bank by being on the winning side, the actual reported figures were still quite shocking to the majority of the fan base. After all, you would have expected some of the other more consistent performers to be at the top of the earners list. That's just how the Saudi League is set up though, as it doesn't really have any losers. Even if your team fails to claim an event, you still get paid at least $1 million on top of the already massive amount of cash that's promised in the contracts. And speaking of contracts, you'd assume that's actually one of the biggest reasons behind the 38-year-old's $10 million earnings, right? Well, in reality, this is just the money he's made by playing the sport. In fact, if you add the $3 million he's made individually by just competing in the previous 3 events on top of his $4 million bumper prize at Boston, that alone brings the number up to over $7 million. From that point, you've just got to factor in the team winnings to get to that big dozen. So contrary to popular belief, his LIV contract doesn't have anything to do with these figures at all. Coming up, what sort of money are Johnson's peers earning? The Saudi League's been criticized a lot over the past year or so for removing some incentive for players to perform at their highest level. If you're already getting over $100 million from your initial contract, then another couple million probably feels like a drop in the ocean at that point. That being said, let's not pretend winning $4 million in a tournament is anything to scoff at. In fact, most golfers would dream of earning that sort of money. But then again, Greg Norman's set up his league in a way that guarantees those winnings even if you don't end up winning anything. Take DJ for example. His massive $150 million LIV deal puts him almost at the top of the pyramid, meaning even if he doesn't perform well at all, he'd still be swimming in cash. On top of that, he, alongside the other 23 members, are also getting $1 million just for setting foot on that course, which, if you're talking about an entire season, can turn into a pretty big number in and of itself. So the Saudi League is actually stacked full of players who have made over $4 million over these past 4 events. As a matter of fact, some golfers like Branden Grace have racked up well over $6 million in their winnings so far, meaning Johnson isn't the only one making big bucks. What's more, the LIV Golf winnings are actually about to increase. Now, there's obviously been a lot of back and forth between Greg Norman's upstart league and the PGA Tour. Like, on one hand, the Saudi League started out as hands down the leader in terms of giving out cash prizes to its members, but it hasn't taken very long for the tour to catch up either, as Tiger Woods has devised a new plan to pour more money into its events. Having said that, it was only a matter of fact before LIV Golf one-upped the competition once again. After all, they do have an endless pit of cash at their disposal, so for the final Invitational in October, we're going to witness the richest purse in the sport's history. Yep, you heard that right. This isn't your everyday event with $12 million on the line. Instead, the Saudi League members will compete for a whopping $50 million. Of course, not all of that money is going to go to a single person, but even by golf's already lofty standards of prize winnings, this is absolutely massive. It kind of makes every other event look like an amateur hour thing. Oh, and they're also switching up the format for this one. So far, these invitationals have had 2 teams going head-to-head for a bigger share of the pie. With the season ender in Miami, though, we're going to get a knockout playoff-style tournament with 12 teams taking each other on like an elimination chamber. Let's learn more about the division of prize money among the teams. Dustin Johnson's been incredibly lucky to be on the winning team in every single LIV Golf Invitational so far, but to be fair, it's a 50-50 chance anyway, so you'd take those odds. That said, this final event is going to be very different from what the 38-year-old's accustomed to. As a matter of fact, he could actually lose out on the $50 million prize money if he's not at the top of his game. Why, you ask? Well, you see, the 4 teams are going to be seeded against each other through a minigame of sorts. Yep, we're not joking, each of the team captains literally has to hit a shot and try to land it near a target. So the person who finishes the closest to the target will be the first seed, with the others following behind based on distance. Obviously, this is a super unconventional way to sort this kind of thing out. The tour's members are actually calling the whole thing a circus, but at the end of the day, it's just a fun way to determine the seeding. The actual prizes, though, are a lot more evenly distributed than you'd think. For instance, first place gets $16 million, with the second place team splitting $10 million among its 4 members, and from that point it gradually goes down all the way to $1 million for those at the bottom. So in essence, at least 4 people will walk away with $4 million each. Finally, not everyone will be able to compete in the big season closer. It's clear Greg Norman's calling in the big briefcase full of money for this final invitational in Miami, and even if you're sitting at the bottom of the LIV Golf pyramid, you should be racking up some serious cash. Well, at least that's what we initially thought anyway. In reality though, we could see some of the top Saudi League players miss out on the chance to claim that big prize. According to LIV Golf CEO Greg Norman, 12 players will be entered into the tournament unconditionally, so your Dustin Johnsons, Phil Mickelsons, and Cameron Smiths of the world will probably get a free pass. After all, they are kind of the main attraction. From that point, things start to get a little more complicated. For instance, the next 24 players are going to be picked based on their individual rankings over, but again, there's a little caveat. You're going to take part in at least 4 events to be eligible, so any latecomers probably won't be able to make it. And last but not least, the final 12 positions will be made up of the highest ranked players in the official World Golf rankings, meaning that even if someone's been out of form lately, they've still got a pretty good shot to qualify. What do you think though? Will this jackpot prize motivate the LIV Golf members to compete at a higher level than before? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.